Good morning.
Somebody.
My name is Zach Hill. I'm the plant record specialist and taxonomist here at Juniper Lowell Botanic Garden at Plant Delights Nursery. And today we're going to talk about the F's of fall: flowers, fruit, foliage, fragrance. We'll see what other F words we find in the garden. A few of the things we're going to talk about here. Here's one that should be available next spring. This is Eysenhardtia texana Uvalde. This is Texas kidneywood. It's a little legume from Texas. This is one of Patrick McMillan's collections from Uvalde, Texas. It's a really good pollinator plant. This has been in the ground for 4 years now, 5 years. It's sort of shrubby. It's covered in lots of little thread-waisted wasps and scoliid wasps, which are these guys. So I mean, it's good for pollinators. The foliage itself smells like sort of scrapple. It's a weird, porky, unusual fragrance, but it's actually a really good late fall blooming shrub. Behind you here, starting to go into fall color, is another plant we grow. This is Ozark Blue Star, Amsonia hubrichtii. It has great yellow fall color. It blooms little star-shaped blue flowers in the spring, native to like Arkansas and Oklahoma, Missouri area. It's a great plant, rock solid perennial. We really don't irrigate this bed at all. It's been here for probably 15-20 years, formed a nice large clump, nice fine textured foliage, and it's native. It's a great plant. And here's another great fragrant plant for the garden. This is almond verbena, Aloysia virgata. It's from South America. It's got a really nice vanilla-y almond scent. It's a dieback shrub for us. It gets obviously about 12 to 15 feet tall in a year, but it's a really rock solid hardy plant for us. My mother's growing it out a little bit further west in the state in High Point. It's gotten into the upper single digits and come right back. So it's a good fragrant plant in the fall.
Now when you say dieback, total dieback?
It dies back completely to the ground, and all of that came up since it started coming up this past spring. So, I mean, give it some space, treat it like a shrub. It's more of a perennial, but, you know, you need to leave it a good, 10, 12 feet of width space. You could keep it trimmed a little smaller if you wanted to, but then you wouldn't have nearly the number of flowers that, the bumblebees are visiting, and all sorts of neat pollinators come to visit this plant in the fall. For more fall color here, this is one of the Fothergillas. It's a witch alder. It's related to witch hazel, has these cones of whitish yellow flowers in the spring, but it gets the most gorgeous like red, orange, yellow fall color. And most of the time in the summer, this one is a nice, very light blue-green foliage. So it's got lots of seasons of interest for the garden. So not all figs are little or, big figs. This is one of the Chinese species, Ficus gaspariniana, subspecies laciniata. A Christmas tree fig, I think is what we called it. It's got little red purple fruit in the fall. It's deciduous. It's got these really interesting dissected leaves. I'm sure the birds eat these fruit as well as people. I mean, it's edible. You're not going to get much out of it. It's pretty seedy. But it's a really neat plant. We've not offered it in a few years, but fully winter hardy for us. So this is Aurelia cordata Sun King. It's just finishing flower. This is a Japanese Aurelia that Barry Yinger introduced into cultivation via a grocery store in Japan that was selling this gold foliaged one when he was over on one of his trips. He brought some back to the States. It got into tissue culture. This one has been in the ground probably 15 years. In cooler climates, it will get a little bigger than this. It's actually it's gone a little green here late in the season, but it emerges this bright chartreusey yellow. So it's a really nice, and then it'll be followed by blackish purple fruits in a little later in the season. Behind us here, this is another interesting flowering shrub. This is Rostronucula dependens. It's a mint relative from China. It's sort of Buddleia-esque with these long, droopy, pink flowers. Obviously, carpenter bees visit it, and other bees. We've offered this in years past, but it's just a really unusual, deciduous, shrubby perennial for us. But it's really neat. It likes sun, and it is in almost full sun here all day long.
Oh, it just has to get above the trees.
Yeah, it's sunny, I would say 9-10 hours of the day here, just based on where we're growing it. It makes some seed, and it will seed around a little bit, but we try to cut it back to keep it from being too weedy. Climbing in this juniper, this is Jasminum officinalis frojaz. It's a yellow foliaged jasmine, it's sort of a vine, has white fragrant flowers during the summer. Sort of scrambles through things. I think we're selling this now. It's a really nice deciduous perennial vine, but then one of the neat things is once it loses its foliage in the fall, it keeps these green stems. So it's sort of winter interest with a green angular stem, and it's climbing into this F-word plant here. This is a Fatshedera. This is Angiostar. This is a hybrid between Fatsia japonica and Hedera helix, so it's sort of a scrambling viney shrub. This is a Japanese variegated selection. It's fully evergreen. It does really well here for us in North Carolina.
How much sun do these need full sun?
They can take full sun. They can also take part sun to some shade. They're pretty adaptable. Fatsia japonica is generally thought to be a shade plant. It can take some sun. We've got a really large specimen of it behind us. This is one from, I believe, the National Arboretum. Japanese Aurelia, Fatsia japonica, fully evergreen. It'll be going into bloom here shortly. Big sprays of white umbels, followed by black seeds, sort of like the Aurelia cordata, but really, really tough plant. It's about a zone 7B plant. We're right about the northern or the colder side of what it can take as far as cold. Hard japonica. Yeah, we sell a couple, we sell at least one spider's web, which is a variegated sort of white splashy leaf form. But it's, you have to leave some space for it. It does want to get to be a large shrub. Sometimes has a little bit of dieback with some of the stems, but it's great. Here we have Actia, used to be Submissifuga rubifolia, it's Actia cordifolia. This is a really rare native bugbane. It's in fruit now. This is one that's really, really rare from like Tennessee and West Virginia area. Very large basal foliage, white spikes of flowers in mid to late summer, followed by these fruit. It's related to the baneberries, which have fleshy white seeds that look like doll's eyes, which we'll see in a bit. So it's a really neat native. We've sold this in the past as well. Since we were just talking about baneberry, we'll come over here and look at this one. This is Actia pachypoda. This is a cousin of the one we were just looking at. It's got these white fruit with a black dot on red peduncles after flowering. It looks nice and pretty. Do not eat it. It is toxic, but it's a really great native plant. White baneberry. This is one Tony collected in Alabama years ago. So it's going into the end of its cycle. And if you look up here, this is sweetheart tree, Eucaphus japonica. It's got these really neat red capsules of fruit with black seeds in them. You can see some up here. If you see like the little black seeds in there. This is a small tree. It's deciduous, but it does really well here in North Carolina. We got our start of this one from some friends up in the Tidewater of Virginia. So.
Is the berry bad also?
The who?
The berry, is that edible or?
No, but it's nice and ornamental. So have a Triceratops hirta here. This is one of the toad lilies. They really come into their peak in the fall for us with these sprays of whitish purple flecked flowers. Toad lilies, they can be grown in sun and shade, and they're really, really pretty tolerant of everything. We sell a number of cultivars of this here in at the nursery. What? Fuzzy foliage, yes, very fuzzy foliage. Oh, I'm gonna go this way. So another fruiting plant. This is a native. You can see the berries starting. This is an Ilex decidua. This is one of our native hollies. This one's really good for the birds. The flowers are pretty nondescript, but forms a fairly large deciduous shrub that will be covered with lots of little red fruit in the fall. The birds love it. And it's a good native plant for the birds. So you got to think about feeding birds through the winter beyond just birdseed. This is a really good, and hollies in general are great for birds. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the gingers that are in foliage now. A lot of curcumas and hedychiums. They're really good. They come up, the curcumas come up pretty late in the summer, like June, but they give you a big, bold flush of color and pinkish, pineapple-y looking flowers at the base, usually in May and June. And we sell a number of these.
Is that a pomegranate?
No, this is Ruscus aculeatus Elizabeth Lawrence. It's a butcher's broom. This is one of the self-fruiting ones. We do offer this. This came from a garden writer here in North Carolina in Raleigh, Elizabeth Lawrence. She wrote a number of books, The Little Bulbs. She lived over near NC State's campus. We got this from her garden at one point, which turned into a frat house over at NC State, and it survived drunken college boys, and Tony got some divisions off of it as well.
Butcher's broom.
Butcher's broom.
Butcher's broom.
It's they look like leaves. They're actually not. These are cladodes. They are modified stems. So if you notice, the fruit actually are on in the middle of the leaf itself. This is related to asparagus. So, I mean, these are technically, the new stems are edible, sort of like asparagus when they first come up. Otherwise, I wouldn't eat them once they get hardened off because they are spiky and will hurt. But it's a great evergreen perennial for us.
Do the birds eat them or not?
I don't think we've ever seen the birds eat them. They've got a big seed in there. I don't know that they're all that palatable.
Okay.
But it's just a really pretty plant. But
Those are great for Christmas decorations.
yeah,
Yes,
it would. It's completely evergreen. There is one, actually, a cultivar called Christmas berry. Since you spoke of that, we haven't offered that in years, but it's a smaller, another self-fruiting form of this. So I would be completely remiss if I didn't talk about the best fragrance in the garden at this time of year. Is Osmanthus fragrans. This is conger yellow, the cultivar. We've got one in the front garden that is an orange one, Aurantiacus, but this one has little yellow flowers, but it's really, really fragrant. This one blooms in the fall, and so you can pass it around and sniff. But it's a large evergreen shrub, hardy to zone 7. This one blooms for us in April and late September. The orange one usually blooms in the fall, not so much in the spring. It's a great evergreen shrub, but this one I think came out of Louisiana as a.
I've seen them that big.
Yeah, you have to leave room for these things. They're not tiny plants. Sort of like Loropetalum, they are large shrubs, small trees, and completely evergreen. But an interesting, corky bark. It's a great plant. Another good plant for fall and winter interest is Aspidistra. Most of the aspidistras are good evergreen plants for us here in central North Carolina. This is a new cultivar seedling we grew, thin man, but they have spots and stripes. Some are variegated, but they're really good sort of winter interest, completely evergreen. The only problem is voles do like to eat them. Oh, yeah. And if you look above us, this is a ginkgo tree. This is a female clone that have these fleshy, single-seeded, technically cones because they're a gymnosperm. But this one is a really heavily fruiting form for us. The Chinese eat the seeds. I wouldn't personally eat them. The fruit itself smells sort of rancid, buttery. It's got a funky smell to it. It's not my favorite, but. So this is one of Ozzie Johnson's Mahonia cultivars. This is Soft Caress. It's a good fall blooming Mahonia for us. Usually they're fragrant. But this one's a little on the tender side. We've improved this a bit in our breeding work here. But I mean, you can see how good it looks against the aspidistra behind it, and with the large foliage of the Asian May apples that we have, like the podophyllum. This is the hybrid between Pleanthum and versipoli, so we made this in-house, and I mean, the leaves are, 2 feet across. So, and they actually bear fruit in the middle of this is not our native mayapple, but has these large fruit that follow the reddish purple flowers in the spring. So, lots of interesting things here. Fruit is not edible. I mean, the seeds, you're not supposed to eat the seeds. They are, I know box turtles do eat the native podophyllum, but most things in this family, which include the Mahonias and epimediums, the Berberidaceae, have lots of chemicals that are not necessarily great for ingestion. Some of them are toxic. Some of them are used in medicine, golden seal, and also blue cohosh is used, but there's a fine line between toxic and medicine, and just the dose that you end up with. And one last fruit for us. This is trifoliate orange. This is a Chinese species, and it's a hardy citrus. It's hardy to zone 6. Smell the fruit. It's very fragrant and fuzzy. It's loaded with seeds. The citrus breeders have used this to create hardier citrus. We've got one on the other side there, which is a hybrid with a grapefruit, which forms big, like grapefruit-sized fruit. That
it has nice, wicked thorns.
Yes, it is. It is not a pleasant plant to touch. It can be invasive. We try to keep the fruit picked up so they're not showing up in the woods around us. I think it is on some watch lists in several states because I have seen it escape, but it's got really fragrant white flowers like normal citrus in the spring. And there are some cultivars that are contorted stemmed ones and contorted spined ones, and some dwarfs. And we've actually sold one of the little tiny guys in the past.
Oh,
so
really?
How cold can it get?
how cold? I think they're zone 6, so like -10 is pretty good. It does lose its foliage in the winter. It's sometimes listed as citrus trifoliata rather than Ponceris. It just depends on which taxonomist you follow. We currently list it as Ponceris because, I don't know, I haven't changed it. So, but I hope you enjoyed this morning. So enjoy the garden. Yes, ma'am.
The one that was really fragrant.
Yes.
The shrub tree.
Yeah, the Osmanthus fragrans.
Yeah, what was that called again?
Osmanthus fragrans. It's tea olive is the common name.
Smell that good.
We do not sell this here. Yeah, we sell a few woodies, but not many. Garden Treasures out of Zebulon sometimes sells some of these. Nurseries Caroliniana in Aiken, South Carolina sells a bunch of cultivars. There's one,
I think Woodlanders has
Woodlanders has sold it before as well. There's a cultivar from China, Qian Gui Fei, that comes out. The new foliage is white to pink, and the whole plant is covered in these whitish pink foliage in the spring, and it greens up. But each flush of growth, it's just this amazing parchment white color, and with the same fragrant flowers.